The screams echoed through Pine Ridge Valley as flames devoured everything in their path. Amidst the chaos, Emma Wilson stood frozen on her porch, the heat of the fire kissing her face while darkness filled her eyes. Her husband's final words still rang in her ears, "Stay right here, I'll come back for you." But as minutes stretched into an eternity, the thundering hooves and wagon wheels faded into the distance. The settlers had fled, and in their panic, they had left Emma behind. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. What happened next would test the limits of human courage as the most unlikely savior emerged from the shadows. A Cheyenne warrior, known to the settlers only as Wolf, would become Emma's sole chance at survival. Together, they would embark on a perilous journey through a wilderness that showed no mercy, pursued by dangers neither could face alone. Emma Wilson had never seen the flames, but she could feel them, hungry, relentless, devouring everything in their path. The heat pressed against her skin like a living thing, stealing the breath from her lungs as she clutched the wooden porch railing of the home she and Thomas had built with their own hands. 3 years in Pine Ridge Valley, and now it was all turning to ash. "Ma! Pa says we gotta go now!" Mary's voice cut through the roar of the fire, her small hand tugging at Emma's skirt. At 12 years old, Mary had become her mother's eyes since the fever had taken Emma's sight 5 winters past. "Where's your father?" Emma asked, her throat tight with smoke and fear. The raiders had struck without warning, sweeping down from the hills with torches and guns, setting fire to the settlement's outermost buildings. The dry summer had turned the valley into kindling. "Loading the wagon. Says there's no time." Mary's voice trembled, high and frightened. "The McAllisters are already gone." Emma nodded, allowing her daughter to guide her down the 3 porch steps she knew by heart. The ground beneath her feet felt strange, no longer the packed earth. She navigated daily, but a chaos of fallen debris and scattered possessions. Somewhere to her right, a building collapsed with a thunderous groan, sending a wave of heat washing over them. "Emma!" Thomas's voice reached her from the direction of their barn. "Hurry, the whole valley's going up." Mary pulled her forward, but Emma stumbled, her knee striking something hard. The pain shot up her leg as she fell, hands splayed to break her fall. "Ma!" Mary cried, trying to help her up. "Go to your father," Emma commanded, pushing herself to her knees. "I'm right behind you." She heard Mary's hesitant footsteps retreating, then Thomas shouting orders. Emma rose unsteadily, her hands outstretched, seeking anything familiar in a world suddenly transformed. A gunshot cracked the air, followed by men's voices, harsh and frantic. "Raiders coming back!" someone yelled. Silas Reed from the neighboring farm, his voice recognizable even in panic. "Thomas!" Emma called, turning in circles, the heat intensifying on all sides. "Mary!" The chaos swelled, horses neighing in terror, people shouting, the crackle of flames consuming wood. Emma took tentative steps forward, then froze as a wagon rumbled past, missing her by inches. "Thomas!" she screamed, but the noise swallowed her voice. "Everyone move out! Now!" The authoritative bark belonged to Captain Jeremiah Holt, a former military man who had appointed himself the settlement's unofficial leader. "Leave what you can't carry!" Emma moved toward his voice, hands stretched before her. "Captain Holt, I can't find my family." A hand gripped her arm, startling her. "Emma, where's Thomas?" It was Martha Reed, Silas's wife, her voice pitched high with terror. "I don't know, we got separated. Raiders coming up the east road." Another shout, followed by the thunder of hooves. Martha's hand slipped away. "I have to find Silas." "Wait!" Emma reached out, grasping nothing but smoke. The ground shook with the weight of departing wagons, the settlers fleeing en masse. She stumbled forward, disoriented by the shifting sounds, the overwhelming heat. "Thomas!" she called again, desperation strangling her voice. "Mary!" A familiar hand seized hers, and relief flooded through her. "Thomas!" "Emma, thank God!" he gasped, his breath ragged. "The wagon's loaded. Mary's in it. We need to go now." She nodded, clinging to his hand as he pulled her forward at a run. Emma counted steps in her mind, trying to orient herself. They were heading west, toward the road that led out of the valley. "Up here," Thomas said, guiding her hand to what felt like the side of their wagon. "I need to get the last of our supplies. Stay right here. I'll come back for you." "Thomas, don't—" "1 minute," he insisted, squeezing her hand. "Just hold on to the wagon. Don't move." His footsteps retreated at a run. Emma pressed herself against the wagon's wooden side, feeling the heat of the fire intensifying. Somewhere, nearby, Mary was calling for her father. A horse shrieked in pain, the sound chilling Emma's blood. "Everyone move out!" Holt's voice again, closer this time. "Raiders have breached the eastern fence. Move!" The wagon beside Emma suddenly lurched, and she stumbled, losing her grip. "Wait!" she called, reaching out, finding nothing. "Thomas!" The wagon was moving. She could hear the creak of its wheels, the snap of reins, Mary's voice crying out, but it was pulling away from her, not waiting, as Thomas had promised. "Stop!" Emma screamed, running forward, arms outstretched. Her foot caught on something, sending her sprawling to the ground. Pain lanced through her palms and knees as she hit the dirt. When she pushed herself up, the sounds of the departing wagons were already fading, overwhelmed by the roar of the approaching fire. They were gone, all of them. Emma knelt in the dirt, paralyzed by the realization. Thomas had told her to wait. He was coming back. He wouldn't leave her. He couldn't have. But the emptiness around her told a different story. In the chaos, in the panic, she had been forgotten, left behind. The heat was becoming unbearable now, closing in from all sides. Emma forced herself to stand, to move, though she had no idea which direction might lead to safety. Her world had always been darkness, but never had it felt so complete, so terrifying. The smoke choked her lungs, making each breath a battle. A gunshot cracked nearby, followed by a man's cruel laugh. The raiders. Emma froze, her heart hammering. Against her ribs. They were in the settlement, looting what remained before the fire claimed it all, if they found her. She had heard the stories, what the Blackwater raiders did to those they captured, women especially. Emma turned and ran. Blindly, one arm extended before her, the other shielding her face from the heat. She collided with something solid, a wall, a fence post, she couldn't tell, and fell again, tasting blood where her lip had split against her teeth. The raiders' voices grew louder, interspersed with the crash of breaking glass and splintering wood. They were methodically destroying what the fire hadn't yet reached. Emma crawled forward, her skirts tangling around her legs. The ground beneath her palms changed from packed dirt to coarse grass. She was at the edge of the settlement, perhaps near the creek that marked its northern boundary. If she could reach the water. A strong hand clamped over her mouth, stifling. Her scream before it could form. Another arm wrapped around her waist, pulling her backward with impossible strength. Emma fought, kicking and twisting, but her captor held firm. "Be still," a voice commanded in her ear, low and fierce. "Not one of the settlers." This voice held a different cadence, the words carefully formed as if English weren't its native tongue. "Or they will hear." Emma went rigid, her terror finding a new focus. "Raiders come," the voice continued, barely above a whisper. "Many men, bad men. You make noise, you die." The hand slowly lifted from her mouth. Emma drew a shuddering breath, but didn't scream. Whoever held her wasn't with the raiders, that much seemed clear. "Who are you?" she whispered. A pause, then, "Wolf." The name meant nothing to her. "Are you one of the Cheyenne?" She had heard there was a band camped in the hills beyond, Thunder Peak, keeping their distance from the settlement. Yes. His grip loosened slightly but didn't release her. Your people run. Leave you. It wasn't a question, but Emma nodded anyway, swallowing past the lump in her throat. My husband. He said he'd come back. Wolf made a sound that might have been contempt. No time now. Raiders find you soon. Please, Emma said, her voice breaking. I can't see. I'm blind. I don't know where to go. His breath caught, just slightly. Then his hand found hers, calloused fingers wrapping around her palm. I guide you, he said, but you must be silent, must be quick. Follow Wolf now. Emma hesitated only a moment before nodding. What choice did she have? Stay and face the raiders, or trust this stranger, this Cheyenne called Wolf, to lead her to safety? Yes, she whispered. I'll follow you. He pulled her to her feet and began moving immediately, his stride purposeful. Emma stumbled after him, her free hand still outstretched from habit. Wolf's grip was firm but not painful, his pace challenging but not impossible. He moved with a silence that amazed her, while her own footsteps seemed thunderous in comparison. They had gone perhaps 50 yards when shouts erupted behind them, the raiders discovering something valuable, or perhaps just venting their destructive fury. Wolf tensed, his stride faltering for just a moment before resuming with greater urgency. Who are they? Emma whispered. Why are they doing this? Blackwater men, Wolf replied, his voice tight. Take what they want, burn what they cannot take. The fire was retreating behind them, its heat diminishing with each step, but the night air carried a new scent. Rain, distant but approaching. A mixed blessing, Emma knew. Rain might quench the flames, but it would also turn the valley's dirt roads to mud, slowing the settlers' escape. And their own. My family, she said, unable to keep the anguish from her voice. My daughter. I need to find them. Wolf's steps didn't slow. They go West Road, to Fort Kearney, many miles, many dangers. Then that's where I need to go. Emma tried to pull her hand free, but Wolf's grip tightened. No. The word was flat, brooking no argument. Raiders between. They kill you. Worse than kill. A sob caught in Emma's throat, but she choked it back. He was right. She knew he was right. Thomas and Mary would be safer with the other settlers. With Captain Holt's militia experience to guide them, they would reach Fort Kearney, and then... Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. What? Would Thomas come back for her, or would he assume she had perished in the flames? Where are you taking me? She asked instead. Wolf was quiet for several steps. Then, east path, through hills, to Silent Valley. Emma had never heard of such a place, but that meant little. Her world had shrunk to the confines of Pine Ridge Valley after her blindness, her knowledge of the surrounding territory limited to what others told her. Is it safe there? Wolf's laugh was short and humorless. Nowhere safe, but raiders not follow there, sacred ground. They had begun to climb, the earth beneath their feet growing steeper, rockier. Emma stumbled repeatedly, but Wolf's grip never faltered, steadying her each time. How far? She asked, her breath coming harder now. Far, he replied simply. Walk all night, reach water before sun. All night, Emma's legs already ached, unused to such exertion. But the alternative, returning to the burning settlement, facing the raiders, was unthinkable. Why are you helping me? She asked suddenly. The question had been forming in her mind since he'd first pulled her from the path of discovery. Wolf was silent so long that Emma thought he might not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice carried a weight she couldn't interpret. I see you before, in settlement, with small girl child. You teach her flowers, which heal, which hurt. Emma remembered. last spring, showing Mary which plants could be used for medicine, which were poisonous. She had relied on touch and smell, having memorized their characteristics before losing her sight. She hadn't realized anyone was watching. You were there, in the settlement. Trade sometimes, furs for metal. Watch from trees. His voice hardened. Settlers not like Cheyenne clothes. Shoot sometimes. The casual mention of violence made Emma flinch. She knew the tension between settlers and the indigenous tribes was a constant undercurrent in territorial life. Thomas himself had participated in security patrols organized by Captain Holt, ostensibly to protect against raiders. But she had wondered sometimes if they had broader targets. "I'm sorry," she said, the words inadequate even to her own ears. Wolf didn't acknowledge her apology. "Step high now," he instructed instead. "Rocks here, many rocks." They climbed in silence after that, the ground growing increasingly treacherous. The distant rumble of thunder warned of the approaching storm, and the wind carried both the scent of rain and, more distantly, smoke. Pine Ridge Valley, burning, everything she had known for 3 years, consumed by flames. Emma's thoughts returned to Thomas and Mary, picturing them huddled in their wagon as it bounced along the rough western road. Had they realized yet that she wasn't with them? Was Thomas frantic, fighting to turn back, while Captain Holt insisted they continue to safety? Or had the panic of their flight wiped all thought from his mind until it was too late? She would never know, she realized with a wave of despair, not unless they found each other again. A raindrop struck her face, then another. The storm was upon them. "Rain come," Wolf confirmed, his pace increasing. "Need shelter soon." "Is there somewhere? Old cave not far, used by my people when hunting." Indeed, the rain intensified rapidly, fat drops giving way to a steady downpour that soaked through Emma's dress in minutes. The temperature dropped with it, the earlier heat of the fire now a distant memory as she began to shiver. Wolf led her relentlessly, onward, up the increasingly steep hillside. The rain made the rocks slick, treacherous. Twice, Emma fell to her knees, crying out as sharp edges cut through her sodden skirts. Each time, Wolf pulled her up without comment and continued their ascent. Emma's world narrowed to sensation, the rain on her face, the cold seeping into her. Bones, the burning in her legs, the inexorable pull of Wolf's hand. Time lost meaning. It could have been minutes or hours that they climbed through the deluge. Finally, Wolf halted. "Here," he said, guiding her forward more carefully. "Duck head." Emma obeyed, bending low. The rain suddenly ceased as Wolf led her into what must be the cave he'd mentioned. The air inside was dry and still, carrying the musty scent of earth and stone. "Sit," Wolf instructed, releasing her hand at last. "Rest now." Emma sank to the ground gratefully, her legs trembling. With exhaustion, she heard Wolf moving about the cave, his footsteps nearly silent even to her sensitive ears. "What are you doing?" she asked, drawing her knees to her chest in a futile attempt to warm herself. "Making fire," Wolf replied. "Small fire, no smoke to see." Emma listened to the soft scrape of what might be stone against stone, then the rustle of what she guessed were dry grasses or twigs. A moment later, she detected the distinctive scent of struck flint, followed by the crackle of catching flame. Warmth bloomed a few feet away, faint but growing. Emma turned toward it instinctively, extending her hands. "Not too close," Wolf cautioned. "Dress wet, dry slow." Emma nodded, letting her hands fall back to her lap. The reality of her situation settled over her like a physical weight. She was miles from her home, her burning home, separated from her family, entirely dependent on a stranger from a people she had been taught to fear. "Why did you help me?" she asked again, needing an answer beyond his earlier observation. Wolf was quiet, tending the fire. When he spoke, his voice came from closer than she expected, just a few feet away. Your people leave you, he said, as if this explained everything. My people not leave behind, not women, not children, not those who cannot see. There was something in his tone, not pity, Emma realized with relief, but a kind of anger. Not at her, but at what had been done to her. They didn't mean to, she said, though she wasn't sure why she was defending them. It was chaos. Thomas, my husband, he told me to wait. He was coming back. But not come back, Wolf said flatly. Emma swallowed hard. No, he didn't. The fire popped and hissed as rainwater dripped from somewhere above and struck the flames. Outside, thunder rolled across the hills, and the rain continued to pour. Emma wondered if it had reached Pine Ridge Valley yet, if it was extinguishing the flames that had devoured her home. What will happen now? She asked, her voice small against the storm's fury. Wolf shifted, the sound of movement followed by the rustle of fabric. Something heavy and dry settled around her shoulders, a blanket or hide of some kind, smelling of smoke and earth and unfamiliar herbs. Now sleep, he said. Tomorrow we walk to Silent Valley. Find my people. And then Emma clutched the covering closer, grateful for its warmth. Wolf was silent for a long moment. Then decide, he said finally. But not alone, not left behind again. Emma nodded, too exhausted to question further. She stretched out on the rocky floor, using the covering as both mattress and blanket, and closed her eyes. A meaningless gesture for her, but one that signaled, to her body, it was time to rest. Sleep claimed her almost immediately, dragging her down into darkness deeper than any she had known since losing her sight. But just before consciousness fled completely, she heard Wolf's voice, so soft she might have imagined it. No one should walk in darkness alone. Morning arrived with the gentle touch of warmth on Emma's face. For a moment, disorientation clouded her mind. This wasn't her bed, wasn't her home. The ground beneath her was hard stone, not the straw-stuffed mattress Thomas had crafted when they first arrived in Pine Ridge Valley. Then memory crashed over her like a wave. The fire, the raiders, the mad flight into the hills, the stranger called Wolf who had led her to safety. You wake, Wolf's voice came from nearby, confirming this wasn't some terrible dream. Good, must move soon. Emma pushed herself to sitting, muscles protesting after the previous night's exertion. The covering, a hide of some kind. She now realized as her fingers explored its texture, slipped from her shoulders. Is it morning? She asked, her voice hoarse from smoke and sleep. Sun rises, Wolf confirmed. Rain stops, but tracks fresh. Emma's heart stuttered. Tracks, you mean the raiders? They're following us? Maybe, maybe not. Not take chance. Something rustled as he moved across the cave. Eat, then walk. Something was pressed into her hands, dry and slightly hard. Emma explored it with her fingers before bringing it to her nose. Jerky of some kind, heavily spiced. Thank you, she said, taking a small bite. The meat was tough, demanding effort to chew, but the flavor was rich and satisfying after a night without food. As she ate, Emma took inventory of her condition. Her dress had dried somewhat overnight, but remained damp in places. Her knees and palms stung from her falls on the rocky hillside. Worst was her footwear. Her boots, never designed for such rough terrain, had begun to rub blisters on her heels and toes. How far must we go today? She asked, dreading the answer. Far, Wolf replied unhelpfully. Then, perhaps sensing her dismay, he added, 2 days to Silent Valley, today cross Blackwater River, tomorrow through Thunder Peak Pass. Emma's spirits sank. 2 more days of walking, with terrain growing increasingly difficult. How could she possibly manage it, blind and unused to such exertion? I don't know if I can, she admitted, hating the weakness in her voice. Wolf was quiet for a moment. Then his footsteps approached, and he crouched beside her. She could feel his presence, sense the subtle shift in the air. You can, he said simply. Must. No choice now. Emma nodded, swallowing her fear. He was right. What alternative did she have? Stay in this cave until starvation claimed her? Try to find her way back to the burned settlement alone? My boots, she said instead. They're not made for this kind of walking. They're hurting my feet. Wolf made a contemplative sound. Show. Emma extended her legs and felt his hands examining her footwear with careful efficiency. Bad for mountains, he agreed. Need moccasins. Make when reach Silent Valley. His hands withdrew. For now, wrap in cloth. She heard him tearing fabric. His own clothing, she realized with a pang of guilt. No, you don't have to. Need. You walk, he interrupted, not carry you whole way. His matter-of-fact tone stopped her protests. This wasn't charity or gallantry. It was pragmatism. Wolf needed her mobile if they both were to survive. His hands were surprisingly gentle as he removed her boots and wrapped the strips of cloth around her blistered feet before replacing the footwear. When he finished, Emma flexed her feet experimentally. The pain was still there, but muted. Better, she acknowledged. Thank you. Wolf grunted in response, already moving away. Finish eating. Leave soon. Emma consumed the rest of the jerky and accepted the water skin Wolf pressed into her hands. The water was cool and slightly mineral tasting, likely from a mountain spring. She drank deeply, then handed it back. Ready, she said, gathering the hide that had been her blanket. Should I bring this? Yes. Nights cold in mountains. Emma folded the hide as best she could and stood, her legs still aching but stronger after food and rest. Wolf approached, and his hand found hers with the same sure grip as the night before. Listen, he said, his voice low and serious. Path dangerous today, more steep, many rocks, stream to cross. You fall, you hurt, maybe die. Emma swallowed, hard but nodded. I understand. When I say stop, you stop. When I say duck, you duck. When I say be quiet, he trailed off, the message clear. I'll do exactly as you say, Emma promised. I want to survive this. Good. Wolf squeezed her hand briefly, then led her toward what she presumed was the cave entrance. Then walk. The air outside was fresh and cool, carrying the clean scent of rain-washed earth and pine. Emma breathed deeply, letting the mountain air cleanse the last of the smoke from her lungs. The storm had cleared during the night, leaving behind a crystalline morning that she could sense even without sight. The warmth of sunlight on her face, the gentle caress of a breeze carrying hints of wildflowers and distant snow. Beneath her feet, the ground was still damp, but no longer treacherous with running water. Wolf set an immediate pace uphill, clearly intent on covering as much distance as possible before the heat of the day made travel more difficult. For the first hour, they moved in near silence, broken only by Wolf's occasional warnings about obstacles in their path. Emma concentrated on her footing, on the subtle cues transmitted through Wolf's grip, on the changing texture of the ground beneath her boots. Her world contracted to the immediacy of survival, one step, then another and another. As the sun climbed higher, warming her back through her dress, Wolf finally broke their silence. How you lose sight? He asked, his voice carrying no pity, only curiosity. Emma was startled by the personal question, but answered readily enough. Fever, 5 winters ago. I was sick for weeks. When I recovered, my sight was gone. Wolf made a thoughtful sound. Bad medicine, he said. Strong sickness. The doctor from Fort Kearney said I was lucky to survive at all, Emma replied, remembering the grave-faced military physician who had examined her afterward. Many didn't. Half the settlement was lost that winter. You learn to see without eyes, Wolf observed. Teach daughter about plants. Good teacher. Emma smiled faintly at the unexpected compliment. I had to adapt. My husband, Thomas, he wanted to send me back east after it happened, to my sister in Boston, but I refused. Why? Emma considered the question, one she had asked herself many times over the years. Because it was still my life, my family, my home. I didn't want to be treated like something broken, sent away to be someone else's burden. Wolf was quiet for several steps. Then, brave, he said simply. The word warmed her more than it should have. Brave was not how most people in Pine Ridge Valley described her. Pitiful, perhaps. Strong-willed sometimes, but rarely brave. What about you? She asked, seizing the moment of openness. You speak English well, better than most of your people from what I've heard. Wolf's hand tightened almost imperceptibly around hers. Was Scout, he said after a pause, for blue coats, Army. Emma couldn't hide her surprise. You worked for the Army, when? 3 summers, show trails, find water, track Sioux. His voice hardened on the last word. But you're not with them now? No. The single syllable carried a weight of history Emma could only guess at. She sensed his reluctance to elaborate, but pressed anyway. What happened? Wolf's pace slowed slightly. For a moment she thought he wouldn't answer. When he did, his voice was carefully controlled. Bluecoat Captain promised safety for my people. Good hunting grounds, protection from miners, settlers. A pause, heavy with meaning. Lies, all lies. Emma winced, understanding dawning. They broke their promise. Soldiers come to village while Wolf away. Say Cheyenne steal horses from fort. Not true. My brother argue. Soldiers shoot him, shoot others, burn lodges. His grip tightened painfully on her hand, then deliberately relaxed. When I return, half village dead, rest scattered. Horror filled Emma at the casual brutality of his tale. I'm so sorry, she whispered. Wolf made a dismissive sound. Words change nothing. I leave blue coats, return to my people. Now we stay far from soldiers, from settlements, until raiders come. The same raiders who attacked Pine Ridge? Emma asked. Yes, Blackwater men take what they want, kill who they want. Army does nothing. Too few soldiers, they say. Too many miles to patrol. The bitterness in his voice was palpable. So you were watching the settlement when the attack happened, Emma realized. Why? Were you planning to help? Wolf laughed, a short, humorless sound. 1 Cheyenne against 20 raiders? No, watch. Only learn their ways, their weapons, for next time. But you helped me, Emma pointed out. Why? Wolf was silent for several paces. You not choose blindness, he said finally, not choose to be left behind. Wolf not choose blood spilled. By blue coats, we both walk in darkness, not of our making. The simple truth of his words struck Emma deeply. For all their differences, man and woman, Cheyenne and settler, sighted and blind, they shared this fundamental reality. Lives derailed by circumstances beyond their control, by the cruelty or indifference of others. Careful now, Wolf warned, interrupting her thoughts. Path narrow, rock wall right side, drop left side, hold tight. Emma pressed closer to him, her free hand reaching out to find the rock face he described. The stone was cool and rough beneath her fingertips, providing both guidance and reassurance. As they inched along what must be a precipitous trail, the path grew increasingly treacherous, forcing them to slow their pace. Emma's world narrowed to the feel of rock under her hand, ground under her feet, and Wolf's steady presence guiding her forward. Time seemed to lose meaning as they navigated the mountain trail, each step demanding complete concentration. When Wolf finally called a halt, Emma was trembling with exhaustion. Rest, he said, guiding her to what felt like a flat boulder. Eat. Drink. Emma sank down gratefully, her legs burning from the constant climb. Wolf pressed another strip of jerky into her hand, followed by the water skin. As she drank, he moved away, his footsteps fading slightly. Where are you going? She asked. a flicker of panic rising. "Not far," he assured her, looking at trail ahead and behind, making sure no one follows. Emma nodded, forcing herself to relax. Wolf returned minutes later, settling beside her on the boulder. "No sign of raiders," he reported. "Good." "How much further today?" Emma asked, stretching her aching calves. "To river by sunset. Make camp. Cross at first light. And tomorrow, through Thunder Peak Pass, then down to Silent Valley." Emma sighed, the magnitude of their journey still daunting despite the progress they'd made. "And your people are there, in Silent Valley?" "Some," Wolf replied. "Small band, women, children, old ones. Warriors hunt in hills." "Will they welcome a settler?" Emma asked, voicing the concern that had been growing since she'd learned. "Their destination." Wolf was quiet for a moment. "They welcome those I bring," he said finally. "You will be safe." It wasn't quite the reassurance Emma had hoped for, but it was enough for now. They resumed their journey after the brief rest, the trail gradually leveling as they traversed the mountainside rather than climbing it directly. As they walked, Wolf began to point out features of the landscape, describing them with surprising detail. "Trail follows deer path here," he told her. "Below, valley with small lake, water clear blue like sky, many flowers, yellow sunflowers, purple coneflower, red paintbrush. Mountains all around, tall with snow still on highest peaks." Emma drank in his descriptions, forming mental pictures that helped distract her from her physical discomfort. "It sounds beautiful," she said wistfully. "It is." Wolf's voice softened slightly. "This land, much beauty, much power. Settlers see only what can be taken. Trees for wood, land for crops, mountains for gold. Not see what is already here." "I wish I could see it," Emma said, meaning both literally and in the deeper sense Wolf described. "You see differently," Wolf replied. "Feel wind, smell pine, hear eagle cry, still see, just not with eyes." His observation struck Emma as profoundly true. Since losing her sight, she had indeed developed a different kind of awareness of the world around her, more immediate in some ways, more intimate. "My mother used to say that God never closes a door without opening a window," she mused. "I didn't understand what she meant until I went blind. Then I discovered all the things I'd never truly noticed before. The different songs birds sing at dawn versus dusk. How the air feels heavy before rain. The way voices carry emotions that faces can hide." Wolf made an approving sound. "Good medicine," he said. "Strong spirit." They continued in companionable silence after that, their pace steady but not punishing. The sun shifted overhead, its warmth moving from Emma's back to her right side as the day progressed. The air grew warmer, then began to cool again as afternoon waned toward evening. Eventually, Emma detected a new sound in the distance, a steady rushing that gradually grew louder. "Water," she said. "The river?" "Yes," Wolf confirmed. "Blackwater River, swollen from rain. Dangerous now." The roar of the water intensified as they approached, until Emma could feel its spray dampening her face. Wolf halted her at what must be the riverbank. "Stay," he instructed. "Find safe place to cross, safe place to camp." Emma nodded, clutching the hide cloak around her shoulders as Wolf's presence receded. The river's voice filled the void, a constant rumbling punctuated by the splash of water over rocks. She tried to visualize the scene, a mountain river in spring flood, churning with rainwater, spanning. How far? Impossible to guess without seeing it. Wolf returned some time later, his hand finding hers with familiar assurance. "Found place," he said. "Camp first. Cross morning when light better." He led her along the riverbank, moving carefully over the slick stones. They climbed slightly, then descended into what felt like a sheltered depression in the bank, a small cave or overhang. Emma guessed as the river's roar suddenly diminished and the air grew still. "Good place," Wolf said. "Hidden from trail. River hides smell from those who track. Safe for night." Emma explored their shelter with outstretched hands, finding smooth stone walls curving in a shallow arc. Not a true cave, but a significant overhang, creating a protected space. The ground was sandy and dry, despite its proximity to the water. Wolf moved with practiced efficiency, gathering material for a small fire. Soon, Emma felt the welcome heat blooming near her feet. The aroma of cooking meat reached her, something fresher than jerky. "You caught something?" she asked, surprised. "Rabbit," Wolf replied. "Snare by trail while you rest earlier." The meal was the most satisfying Emma had eaten since their flight began. Fresh meat seasoned with herbs Wolf had gathered along their route. As they ate, she found herself wondering about Thomas and Mary. Had they reached Fort Kearney? Were they safe? Did they believe her dead? "You think of family," Wolf observed, his perceptiveness startling her. "Yes," she admitted. "I can't help but worry." "Natural," he said. "Mother thinks of child, wife thinks of husband." "Do you have family?" Emma asked, suddenly curious. "Besides your brother who was lost." Wolf was silent long enough that Emma thought she might have offended him. When he spoke, his voice was distant, as if reaching back through years. "Had wife once, son too, before blue coat time." Emma's heart constricted at his use of past tense. "What happened?" "Sickness come to village, white man sickness." His voice was flat, emotionless. "Many die, my son first. My wife try to save him. She die after." "I'm so sorry," Emma whispered, understanding now the depth of his isolation. Wolf made a dismissive sound. "Long time ago, different life." But Emma sensed the wound was still raw, still bleeding beneath his stoic exterior. "Is that why you became a scout for the army, after losing them?" "Yes, nothing left in village but ghosts. Thought working with bluecoats might protect what remained of my people." A bitter laugh escaped him. "Fool's thought." Emma reached out impulsively, her hand finding his arm. "You were trying to help your people. There's no shame in that." Wolf didn't respond directly, but he didn't pull away from her touch either. They sat in silence as the fire crackled between them, the river's constant voice filling the night. Eventually, Wolf stirred. "Sleep now," he said. "Long day tomorrow. Difficult crossing." Emma arranged herself as comfortably as possible on the sandy floor, using the hide cloak as a blanket once again. Despite her physical exhaustion, sleep proved elusive as her mind churned with all she had learned about her enigmatic guide. Wolf was more complex than she had initially assumed. A man who had lost everything, who had tried to bridge the divide between his world and hers, only to be betrayed in the cruelest way. Yet he had not become entirely bitter, had not abandoned his humanity. He had saved her when her own people had left her behind. "Wolf," she whispered, unsure if he was still awake. "Yes?" His voice came from nearby, alert despite the late hour. "Thank you, not just for today, but for everything, for not leaving me." His silence stretched so long that Emma thought he might not respond. Then, softly, "Sleep, Emma Wilson. Tomorrow comes early." It was the first time he had used her name, she realized with a strange flutter in her chest. She closed her eyes and let the river's lullaby carry her into dreams. Dawn arrived with Wolf's hand on her shoulder, gently shaking her awake. "Time," he said simply. "River waiting." Emma sat up, disoriented for only a moment before memory rushed back. Her body ached from the previous day's exertions, but less severely than she had feared. She accepted the strip of jerky Wolf offered, chewing mechanically as her mind focused on the challenge ahead. "How will we cross?" she asked. the rivers. Roar seeming louder in the morning air. Found shallow place, Wolf explained. Still deep in middle. Fast water. Cold. He paused. Can you swim? Emma nodded. Yes, though it's been years. Not since. She trailed off, not needing to specify since when. Good. Wolf sounded relieved. Will help, but need you strong. Need you fight current. I understand. Emma finished the jerky and rose, stretching, her stiff muscles. Should I? My dress will drag me down if it gets soaked through. Wolf considered this. Remove outer dress, he decided. Keep underclothes. Wrap dress in hide, carry on head. Keep dry for after. Heat rose in Emma's cheeks at the thought of stripping down to her undergarments before a man who was still largely a stranger. But modesty was a luxury she could no longer afford. Survival demanded pragmatism. Turn around, she requested, and heard Wolf's footsteps as he obliged. Emma fumbled with the buttons of her dress, fingers clumsy with cold and nervousness. Eventually, she managed to step out of the garment, folding it as neatly as she could before wrapping it in the hide cloak. Ready, she said, crossing her arms over her chest. The morning air was cool against her skin, raising goosebumps on her exposed arms and calves. Wolf approached, his footsteps deliberate to announce his presence. Carry this, he said, placing the bundled dress and hide on top of her head. Hold with one hand, other hand hold Wolf. Emma balanced the bundle with her right hand, grateful that it wasn't too heavy. Wolf took her left hand, his grip as secure as ever. Follow exactly, he instructed as he led her from their shelter. River strong. One misstep, current take you. Emma swallowed hard, suddenly terrified. But there was no alternative. They couldn't stay where they were, and going back was impossible. They descended to the river's edge, the roar of the water, now deafening. Spray dampened Emma's face and arms as Wolf guided her carefully over slick stones. Water cold, he warned as they reached the edge. Take breath away. Keep walking. Don't stop. Emma nodded, tightening her grip on both the bundle atop her head and Wolf's hand. He led her into the river, and she gasped as the icy water enveloped her feet, then her calves. By the time it reached her knees, the current was already tugging at her, threatening to sweep her feet from under her. Wolf moved with careful deliberation, testing each step before committing his weight. Emma followed precisely in his footsteps, feeling her way with each foot before shifting her weight forward. The water crept higher, to her thighs, then her waist, stealing her breath with its frigid embrace. Deep part comes, Wolf called over the river's roar. Water to shoulders, stay close. Emma nodded, though he couldn't see it, and tightened her grip on his hand. The bottom dropped away suddenly, plunging her deeper into the numbing cold. She gasped, nearly losing her hold on the bundle atop her head. Steady, Wolf encouraged, his own voice strained with effort. Few more steps. The current pulled, relentlessly at Emma's body, threatening to tear her away from Wolf's grip. Her feet scrambled for purchase on the rocky riverbed, finding it intermittently as they worked their way across the deepest channel. Then, abruptly, Wolf lost his footing. Emma felt him stumble, heard his sharp intake of breath. His hand wrenched in hers as the current caught him, pulling them both downstream. "Wolf!" she cried, terror lancing through her as their connection threatened to break. His fingers clamped around her wrist with bruising force, refusing to let go even as they were both swept into the main current. Emma felt herself tumbling, the bundle torn from her head, water closing over her face. She fought to the surface, gasping, Wolf's grip the only constant in a world suddenly spinning out of control. "Kick!" he shouted, his voice barely audible, above the water's roar. "Kick towards me!" Emma obeyed, forcing her numb legs to move. Wolf's other hand found her shoulder, then her waist, pulling her against him as they battled the current together. She clung to him, her arms locked around his torso, her face pressed against his chest. Wolf was swimming now, powerful strokes carving through the water, angling them towards what must be the far shore. Emma kicked as best she could, trying to assist rather than hinder his efforts. After what seemed an eternity, Wolf's feet found purchase on the riverbed once more. He stood, water cascading from his body, still holding Emma firmly against him. "Stand," he commanded, his voice ragged with exertion. "Can you stand?" Emma lowered her legs, relieved when her feet touched stone. "Yes," she gasped, still clinging to him for support as they waded towards the shore. They collapsed together on the rocky bank, breath coming in harsh pants, bodies trembling with cold and adrenaline. Emma lay on her back, the morning sun, a blessed warmth on her face after the river's icy embrace. The bundle, she realized suddenly, my dress, the hide, they're gone. "Yes," Wolf confirmed, his voice weary. "River, take them." Emma fought down a surge of despair. Her dress had been the last tangible link to her life in Pine Ridge Valley, and the hide had been their only protection against the mountain nights. "What now?" she asked, hugging herself as shivers racked her body. Wolf rose, water dripping from his clothes. "Now walk," he said simply. "Sun warm us. Dry clothes. Reach Silent Valley before night, or—" He didn't need to finish the thought. Without proper clothing or shelter, exposure in the mountains would be a death sentence. Emma forced herself to her feet, her soaked undergarments clinging uncomfortably to her skin. Modesty seemed a distant concern now, superseded by the more immediate need for survival. "Lead on," she said, reaching for his hand. Wolf took it without comment, and they began to climb away from the river. Emma's teeth chattered uncontrollably, her body fighting to generate warmth. The sun helped somewhat, but the mountain air remained cool even as morning advanced. As they walked, Wolf described their route in greater detail than before, perhaps sensing her need for distraction from their physical discomfort. "Path follows old game trail," he told her, "up through pine forest, then along ridge. Thunder, peak on left, tall mountain looks like teeth-biting sky. Pass runs between Thunder Peak and smaller mountain, no name in your tongue. After pass, down into Silent Valley." "How far to the valley?" Emma asked through chattering teeth. "Many hours," Wolf admitted. "Hard walking, but no choice now." No choice. The phrase had become a refrain of their journey, a simple truth that propelled them forward despite all obstacles. Emma squared her shoulders and pressed on, focusing on the warmth gradually returning to her limbs as they climbed higher into the mountain pass. By midday, her undergarments had dried somewhat, though the chill never quite left her bones. Wolf kept them moving at a relentless pace, stopping only briefly for water and a few mouthfuls of berries he gathered along the trail. Thunder Peak. "Pass ahead," he announced as the ground began to level beneath their feet. "Narrow, wind strong, stay close to wall." Emma nodded, already feeling the stronger gusts funneling through what must be a natural chute between the mountain peaks. Wolf guided her hand to a rock face on their right, and she ran her fingers along it as they proceeded, grateful for its solid presence. The wind grew fiercer as they advanced, howling through the pass with an almost human voice. It tore at Emma's hair, whipped her damp underclothes against her skin, and stole her breath when she turned her face into it. Still, Wolf pressed onward, his hand a lifeline in the chaos of sound and sensation. They had nearly reached the midpoint of the pass when Wolf suddenly halted, his body tensing beside her. "What is it?" Emma whispered, sensing his alarm. "Riders," he replied, voice barely audible above the wind. "Coming up from valley side, many horses." Emma's heart lurched. "Raiders? Or soldiers?" Wolf said grimly. "Either way, not friends." "What do we do?" Fear clawed at Emma's throat. There was nowhere to run, nowhere to hide in the exposed pass. Wolf was silent for a moment, clearly weighing their limited options. Then he pulled her closer to the rock wall, his hands finding a crevice she hadn't detected. "Here," he said, guiding her hands to the narrow opening. "Cave in rock, small but hide us." Emma felt the gap, barely wide enough for a person to squeeze through. "You first," she urged. "No," Wolf replied firmly. "You first, I follow." Argument would waste precious time. Emma turned sideways and edged into the crevice, the rough stone scraping her arms and face as she inched deeper into the mountains. Embrace. The passage continued for several feet before widening slightly into what felt like a small, natural chamber. Wolf followed immediately behind her, his breathing controlled but rapid. "Down," he whispered. Flat against ground. No sound. Emma obeyed, pressing herself to the cold stone floor of their hiding place. Wolf settled beside her, his body radiating tension as they waited. The wind's howl masked the approaching riders at first, but gradually Emma detected the distinctive rhythm of hoofbeats echoing through the pass. They grew louder, accompanied by the jingle of tack and the occasional shout between riders. "Blue coats," Wolf breathed in her ear, his voice carrying a mix of certainty and contempt. "Army patrol." Emma's heart raced. Soldiers meant safety for her. But danger for Wolf. After what he had told her about his history with the army, she understood his fear all too well. The riders slowed as they approached the midpoint of the pass, voices carrying more clearly as they exchanged comments about the terrain. Emma strained to hear their words over the wind's constant moan. "Track them through here," one voice called. "Waste of time," another responded. "Miles of wilderness." "Captain's orders," the first insisted. "Find the Cheyenne dog and the settlers." Emma's blood froze. They were being hunted, not by raiders, but by the army itself. But why? What possible reason could the soldiers have for pursuing them? Wolf's hand found hers in the darkness, squeezing once, reassurance or warning she couldn't tell. They lay perfectly still as the patrol passed directly outside their hiding place, the soldiers' voices fading. As they continued through the pass towards the river, only when the last echo of hoofbeats had vanished did Wolf speak. "They hunt us," he said, confirming Emma's fear. "You understand why?" Emma shook her head, bewildered. "No. Why would the army be looking for us? They should be helping the settlers. Reach Fort Kearny safely." Wolf's voice hardened. "Not looking to help, looking to kill." Heard them say Cheyenne dog and settlers, plural. "But that makes no sense," Emma protested. "I'm just a blind woman from Pine Ridge. Why would they care about me?" Wolf was silent for a moment. When he spoke, his voice carried a grim certainty. "Someone tell soldiers I take you. Make them believe I raid settlement. Take you prisoner." Understanding dawned, horrifying in its implications. "They think you abducted me during the raid? That you're one of the attackers?" "Yes. Easy lie to believe. Settlers fear Cheyenne. Army hates Wolf already for leaving them. Now they hunt us both." Emma's mind reeled. Someone, perhaps Captain Holt or another settler who had glimpsed them fleeing, had created a narrative that cast Wolf as kidnapper rather than rescuer. It was a lie that would be readily believed by soldiers already prejudiced against the indigenous tribes. "We have to tell them the truth," she said. "Explain what really happened." So Wolf's bitter laugh was answer enough, but he elaborated anyway. "Truth means nothing. Your word against captains. My word worth less than dirt to bluecoats." He was right, Emma realized with sinking heart. An accusation against a respected military officer made by a blind woman and a Cheyenne warrior with a history of desertion from army service? They would never be believed. "Then we keep going," she said, resolve hardening within her. "We reach your people in Silent Valley." "Yes," Wolf agreed, shifting to extract himself from their hiding place. "But now we must hurry. Soldiers will find river crossing. See we pass there. We'll follow." Emma followed him back through the narrow crevice, emerging into the wind-scoured pass once more. Wolf's hand found hers immediately, and they set off at a faster pace, urgency lending strength to their tired limbs. The knowledge of pursuit transformed their journey. Where before they had been fleeing a general danger, Now they had specific enemies on their trail, enemies with horses, weapons, and the authority of the United States Army behind them. The stakes had risen dramatically. As they cleared the far side of the pass and began their descent towards Silent Valley, Emma found herself reflecting on the strange turn her life had taken. 3 days ago, she had been Emma Wilson, wife of Thomas, mother of Mary, a blind settler woman largely pitied by her community. Now she was a fugitive, fleeing alongside a Cheyenne warrior, both of them condemned by lies before they could speak a word in their defense. The irony was not lost on her. Emma had been abandoned by her own people, only to be rescued by a man her community would have considered an enemy. And now they were united in their fight to survive, bound by a common struggle against prejudice and persecution. "Almost there," Wolf announced as the ground began to level beneath their feet. Silent Valley ahead. Emma squeezed his hand, a gesture of gratitude and solidarity that transcended words. Whatever awaited them in Silent Valley, they would face it together. Silent Valley revealed itself not through sight, but through sound, or rather, the absence of it. As Emma and Wolf descended the final slope, the howling mountain winds gradually subsided, replaced by a profound stillness that enveloped them like a blanket. Even their footsteps seemed muffled, as if the earth itself absorbed all harshness. "Why is it so quiet?" Emma whispered, afraid to disturb the tranquility. "Sacred ground," Wolf replied, his own voice hushed. "Valley catches sound, holds it. Old ones say spirits of ancestors walk here, demand respect." Emma nodded instinctively, understanding the need for reverence. After days of constant danger and exertion, the valley's serenity washed over her like a balm. "My people camp on far side," Wolf continued, guiding her forward. "Near hot springs, good place for healing." "Will they welcome me?" Emma asked, anxiety returning as she contemplated meeting Wolf's band. "After what your people have suffered at the hands of settlers." Wolf was silent for several steps. "Not easy," he admitted finally. "Some remember only pain. Hold anger close like treasure, but others understand. No, not all settlers carry same heart." "And the elders? The leaders?" "Grandmother Raven leads this band now," Wolf said. "She is wise, sees beyond first glance." The subtle emphasis on sees wasn't lost on Emma. "She'll judge me by more than my origins." "Yes, but must prove yourself worthy of shelter." Wolf's grip tightened slightly on her hand. "Must show strength already seen by Wolf." Emma swallowed hard. The prospect of being evaluated, of needing to prove her worth to survive, was daunting. Yet hadn't she already faced worse? Survived. Abandonment, a harrowing river-crossing pursuit by soldiers. "I understand," she said firmly. "I'm ready." They walked for another hour. The terrain gentler now, the ground beneath their feet rich with soft grass and fragrant herbs that released their scent with each step. Bird calls punctuated the stillness, not the common sparrows and robins of the settlement, but unfamiliar songs that seemed to Emma more complex, more melodic. "Many birds here," Wolf observed, noting her attentive head tilt. "Valley protects them. No hunting of winged ones in sacred ground." "They're beautiful," Emma murmured. "I've never heard such songs." "Eyes closed, ears open," Wolf said, a hint of approval warming his voice. "Good way to walk in Valley." Emma smiled, touched by his understanding. Wolf had never once treated her blindness as a weakness to be pitied, but rather as a different way of experiencing the world, sometimes limiting, sometimes advantageous, but always simply part of who she was. The air gradually changed as they progressed, becoming warmer, more humid. A mineral scent teased Emma's nostrils, reminiscent of the hot springs near Fort Kearny, where Thomas had once taken her to ease her perpetual headaches after the fever. "Hot springs close," Wolf confirmed. "Camp just beyond ridge." Tension coiled in Emma's stomach. Soon she would face Wolf's people, standing before them in nothing but her rain-dampened undergarments, a blind settler woman dependent on their mercy. The vulnerability of her position struck her anew, bringing a flush of shame to her cheeks. Wolf sensed her discomfort. First to grandmother's lodge, he decided. Get proper clothes, food, then meet others. Emma nodded gratefully. Thank you. As they crested the final rise, new sounds reached Emma's ears. The low murmur of voices, the rhythmic thud of what might be someone pounding leather or grain, the bright laughter of children. Normal sounds of a community going about its daily life, yet distinctly different from the cacophony of Pine Ridge Valley with its saws, hammers, and constant shouted instructions. Their approach did not go unnoticed. The voices hushed, then rose in questioning tones. Quick footsteps approached, several people moving with purpose. Wolf called out something in Cheyenne, his voice carrying a formality Emma hadn't heard before. A woman responded, her tone sharp with surprise or suspicion. More voices joined in, creating a complicated exchange Emma couldn't follow. "What are they saying?" she whispered anxiously. "Questions," Wolf replied tersely. "Why Wolf brings settler woman? Why you wear no proper clothes? If others follow." Another voice cut through the growing commotion. Older, female, carrying an unmistakable authority that silenced the others immediately. The woman spoke briefly, her words measured. Wolf's posture straightened beside Emma. "Grandmother Raven," he murmured. "She says bring you to her lodge. Now." He guided Emma forward, through what felt like a gauntlet of staring eyes and hushed whispers. Her cheeks burned with embarrassment, acutely aware of her near-naked state, and utter dependence on Wolf's protection. The ground beneath her feet changed from grass to something harder, packed earth perhaps, and then to what felt like soft hide as Wolf led her into a structure of some kind. The air inside was warmer, fragrant with herbs and smoke from a small fire. Wolf guided her to what seemed to be a seating mat and helped her settle. A woman's voice spoke from across the fire, her English accented, but clear. "So, Wolf brings a blind woman from the settlement. This is, unexpected." "Grandmother Raven," Wolf acknowledged. "This is Emma Wilson. Her people abandoned her when raiders attack, left her to die." "Is this true, Emma Wilson?" the elder asked directly. Emma nodded, her throat tight. "Yes, there was chaos, fire everywhere. My husband told me to wait by our wagon while he got our daughter, but everyone left in the panic." She swallowed hard. "Wolf found me, saved me from the raiders, led me here through great danger." Grandmother Raven was silent for a moment. "Wolf has always had a soft heart beneath his warrior face," she observed, her tone unreadable. "But bringing a settler here, there is risk in this decision." "Blue coats follow," Wolf said grimly. "Think I raid settlement, take her prisoner." A sharp intake of breath was the only indication of Grandmother Raven's surprise. "You are certain?" "Heard them in Thunder Peak. Pass, hunting us." The old woman sighed, a sound heavy with weary knowledge. "Always the same story. Any harm to settlers must be blamed on our people, even when we suffer the same enemy." "I know Wolf didn't attack my settlement," Emma said earnestly. "The raiders were the Blackwater Gang, men who've been terrorizing both settlers and indigenous people for months. The army has done nothing to stop them. And yet now they hunt with great urgency," Grandmother Raven noted dryly. "Strange how they find energy to pursue a Cheyenne man helping a settler woman, but none to protect either of our peoples from true predators." Emma couldn't disagree. The bitter truth of the old woman's observation struck too close to her own. Growing disillusionment. "The question remains," Grandmother Raven continued, "what to do with you, Emma Wilson?" Wolf spoke up. "She needs shelter, protection, teaching." "Teaching?" Grandmother Raven echoed, sounding intrigued despite herself. How to survive, Wolf explained. She learns quickly, strong spirit, but needs more knowledge to live in this land. The old woman made a thoughtful sound. And you propose to teach her, Wolf? You, who have walked alone since returning to us. An uncomfortable silence followed her pointed question. Emma sensed there was history here she didn't fully understand. Friction, perhaps between Wolf and his community since his return from army service. If not Wolf, then Grandmother, he replied finally, a hint of challenge in his voice. Or dancing fawn, any who would share wisdom with one willing to learn. Grandmother Raven's tone suggested she was studying Emma carefully. First, she needs proper clothes, food, rest. Then we will see what kind of student she makes. She raised her voice slightly. Dancing fawn! Light footsteps approached, and a young woman's voice responded in Cheyenne. Bring clean clothes for our guest, Grandmother Raven instructed in English, and prepare food. She has traveled far with little rest. Yes, Grandmother. The young woman, dancing fawn, departed quickly. Wolf, join the hunters, Grandmother Raven continued. They prepare to check traps in the eastern hills. Your skills are needed, and it would be wise for you to be seen working, not hovering over this woman. Emma felt Wolf tense beside her. Blue coats will not find us today, the elder interrupted firmly. If they tracked you through Thunder Peak, they must still cross the river. That gives us time. Go now. Show the others you still think of the band's needs. After a moment's hesitation, Wolf squeezed Emma's hand. I return by nightfall, he promised, then rose and departed, his reluctance evident in his measured steps. Once he had gone, Grandmother Raven spoke again, her voice lower, more intimate. Now, Emma Wilson, let us speak woman to woman, with no man's shadow between us. Emma straightened, aware she was being evaluated. I'm grateful for your hospitality, Grandmother. Hospitality not yet decided, the old woman countered. First, understanding. Tell me your story, the true story, with nothing held back. So Emma did. She spoke of her life in Pine Ridge Valley, of the fever that took her sight, of learning to navigate a world of darkness. She described the raid, the chaos of evacuation, the moment she realized she had been left behind. And she recounted Wolf's rescue, their harrowing journey, the growing bond between them forged through shared danger and mutual respect. Throughout her tale, Grandmother Raven remained silent, interjecting only occasionally with a question to clarify some detail. When Emma finally finished, the old woman sighed deeply. Truth shines in your words, she acknowledged, and your journey shows courage. But your presence brings danger to my people, danger we have not invited. I understand, Emma said solemnly. I don't want to put anyone at risk. If you wish me to leave once I've rested, and go where? Grandmother Raven interrupted. Back to those who abandoned you? To the army that hunts you? No, Emma Wilson. Having brought you here, we bear responsibility for you now. Before Emma could respond, Dancing Fawn returned, her approach announced by the soft rustle of fabric. She spoke briefly in Cheyenne, and Grandmother Raven responded with instructions that seemed to involve helping Emma. Dancing Fawn will take you to the women's bathing place at the hot springs, Grandmother Raven explained. There you can wash, away the journey's dirt, and she will help you dress in proper clothes. After you will eat and rest. Thank you, Emma said, rising carefully. I'm in your debt. Yes, the old woman agreed matter-of-factly. Remember that in days to come. Dancing Fawn's touch was gentle as she guided Emma from the lodge and through the camp. Unlike Wolf's firm grip, the young woman's hand rested lightly on Emma's arm, her guidance more suggestive than directive. They walked in silence until they had passed beyond the main camp, the ground sloping gently downward. You really not see at all, Dancing Fawn asked suddenly, her English halting but clear. No, Emma confirmed. Not since the fever 5 years ago. Must be hard, the young woman observed. In settlement, with all people rushing, pushing. Emma smiled wryly. It was. Challenging. People meant well, but they often forgot I couldn't see their gestures or written notes. And many thought I couldn't do anything for myself anymore. Not Wolf, Dancing Fawn said with certainty. He not treat anyone as helpless. No, Emma agreed warmly. He expected me to keep up, to learn, to contribute. It was refreshing. Dancing Fawn made a sound of understanding. Wolf different since returning from Blue Coats, more distant, harder, but still Wolf inside. She guided Emma around what must have been a difficult obstacle. Here now, women's bathing pool. Very hot water comes from earth, good for tired. Muscles, for healing. The mineral scent was stronger here, accompanied by the gentle lapping of water and rising steam that dampened Emma's face. Dancing Fawn helped her remove her filthy undergarments, a process that would have mortified Emma just days ago, but now seemed merely practical. Step careful, the young woman cautioned, guiding Emma's foot to the edge of the pool. Stone, slippery. Emma eased herself into the water, gasping at the intense heat before her body adjusted. The sensation was glorious, the hot water immediately beginning to unlock muscles knotted by days of tension and exertion. She sank deeper, letting the heat envelop her to her shoulders. Good? Dancing Fawn asked, amusement in her voice. Wonderful, Emma sighed, feeling truly clean for the first time since fleeing Pine Ridge Valley. Dancing Fawn settled nearby, evidently content to wait while Emma bathed. After giving Emma a few minutes to simply soak, she offered a cake of something that smelled pleasantly of sage and cedar. Soap, she explained, made from yucca root and fat, good for skin, hair. Emma accepted it gratefully, working it through her tangled hair and across her skin, wondering at the simple luxury of cleanliness she had once taken for granted. When she had finished, Dancing Fawn helped her from the pool and wrapped her in a soft deerskin blanket. Clothes here, the young woman said, guiding Emma's hands to a neatly folded pile. Dress like our women wear, leather, not cloth. Last longer, better for mountain life. The garments were unfamiliar in cut and construction, but Dancing Fawn patiently helped Emma into each piece. Soft hide leggings, a long tunic-like dress with intricate beading at the collar, and moccasins that felt like clouds compared to her, lost boots. How do I look? Emma asked when they had finished, running her hands over the unfamiliar garb. Dancing Fawn made an approving sound. Good, strong, like Cheyenne woman. She paused, then added more softly, Wolf will think same. Emma felt heat rise to her cheeks that had nothing to do with the hot spring. Wolf and I are we're not. Dancing Fawn laughed, the sound bright and knowing. Not yet, maybe, but his eyes follow you. His spirit walks beside yours already. Before Emma could formulate a response to this startling observation, Dancing Fawn was guiding her back toward the camp. Now food, then sleep, later teaching begins. The meal was simple but nourishing. A rich stew of what Dancing Fawn identified as rabbit, wild onions, and prairie turnips, accompanied by a flat bread, unlike anything Emma had tasted before. She ate in Grandmother Raven's lodge, the old woman, observing in silence before departing to attend to other matters. Afterward, exhaustion claimed Emma completely. Dancing Fawn showed her to a small lodge that had been prepared for her. Guest place, she explained, for those who visit from other bands. The bedding was piled furs and blankets that felt luxurious after nights spent on stone and earth. Emma sank into them gratefully, sleep overtaking her almost instantly. She woke to the gentle sound of rain pattering on the lodge covering, momentarily disoriented before memory sorted itself into place. The air was cool, suggesting evening or early morning, and carried the scent of damp earth and wood smoke. "You wake," Wolf's voice came from near the lodge entrance. "Good. Slept long time." Emma sat up quickly, self-consciously smoothing her hair. "How long?" "Sunset, Rose, now setting again," he replied. "Body needed healing time." "A full day?" Emma was stunned. "I didn't mean to be such a burden." "Not burden, necessary." Wolf moved closer, settling near her bedding. "Feel stronger now?" Emma took inventory of her body, surprised to find the aches and pains of their journey had largely subsided. "Yes, much. The hot springs helped, and these clothes are far more comfortable than my old dress would have been." "Good clothes for mountain life," Wolf agreed. "Dancing fawn chews well." "She was very kind," Emma said. "So was grandmother. Raven, considering the danger my presence brings to your people." Wolf made a dismissive sound. "Grandmother knows danger comes whether you hear or not. Bluecoats always find reason to trouble Cheyenne." "Have they been seen?" "The soldiers?" Emma asked anxiously. "Scouts watch passes," Wolf replied. "No bluecoats yet, but will come. Always come." The resignation in his voice prompted Emma to reach out, her hand finding his arm. "I'm sorry, for all of it, for what my people have done to yours." Wolf was silent for a moment. "You not responsible for all settlers," he said finally, "just as Wolf not responsible for all Cheyenne. Each person walks own path." The wisdom in his words struck Emma deeply. How often had she chafed against being treated as merely the blind woman, rather than as Emma? Was it not the same injustice to see Wolf only as the Cheyenne, rather, than as the complex individual he was? "What happens now?" she asked. "Grandmother Raven mentioned teaching." "Yes, teaching begins tomorrow. Many things to learn." Wolf's voice held an energy she hadn't heard before. How to find food in forest, how to make medicine from plants, how to listen to land, to animals, to weather. "You'll teach me?" "Wolf, teach hunting, tracking, moving silent in forest. Dancing fawn, teach plants, medicines, women's crafts. Grandmother, teach other things." "Other things?" Emma echoed, curious. Wolf hesitated. "Spirit things, old ways of seeing without eyes." Emma's heart quickened with interest. She knows about that, about ways for the blind to perceive the world. "Grandmother Raven has many secrets," Wolf replied cryptically. "Listen well when she speaks." A call from outside interrupted their conversation. Someone summoning Wolf in Cheyenne. He responded briefly, then turned back to Emma. "Must go, Hunter's Council." He stood, then added, "Wear this," pressing something into her hands. Emma's fingers explored the object, a knife in a leather sheath, smaller than the one Wolf carried, but still substantial. "I don't understand." "For protection," Wolf explained, "not just from enemies, for tasks, for work. All here carry blade. Shows you not helpless, not child to protect." The gift carried significance beyond its practical value, Emma realized. It was Wolf's way of acknowledging her as capable, as equal. "Thank you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I'll prove worthy of it." Wolf's hand briefly touched her shoulder. "Already have." Then he was gone, leaving Emma to consider the strange new path her life had taken. The days that followed established a routine unlike anything Emma had known in Pine Ridge Valley. Each morning began before dawn, with Grandmother Raven's quiet instruction in what the old woman called deep listening, a practice of extending one's senses beyond their normal limits. "Blindness is not absence of sight," Grandmother Raven explained as they sat outside her lodge in the pre-dawn stillness. "It is invitation to see differently, to hear what others miss, to feel what others ignore, to know what eyes cannot tell. Under the elders' guidance, Emma learned to distinguish subtle variations in air pressure that indicated an approaching storm, to recognize individuals by their distinctive footfalls long before they spoke, to orient herself by the position of the sun's warmth on her skin. After these sessions came practical instruction with Dancing Fawn, who taught Emma to identify plants by touch and smell, to prepare foods in the Cheyenne way, to work leather into useful items. The young woman's patience was boundless, her explanations clear, her corrections gentle but precise. "You learn quick," Dancing Fawn observed on the 5th day as Emma successfully completed a simple pair of moccasins. "Hands remember what eyes miss." Emma smiled, running her fingers over her handiwork. "I've always been good with my hands. Before losing my sight, I was known for my embroidery. Afterward, I focused on what I could still do: knitting, cooking. By touch and smell, feeling my way through tasks others thought impossible for me." "Is good way," Dancing Fawn approved. "Many settlers give up when difficulty comes. Expect easy path always." "That was never an option for me," Emma said simply. The afternoons belonged to Wolf, whose instruction took them beyond the camp's boundaries into the surrounding wilderness. Here his teaching was more demanding, more intense. How to move silently through underbrush, how to track game by sound and scent, how to find water in seemingly dry places. "Lower," he instructed on their 6th day, pressing on Emma's shoulders. As she attempted to cross a gravelly stretch without sound, weight on ball of foot, not heel, roll step, not place flat. Emma adjusted her stance, concentrating on each movement. The practice was exhausting, requiring constant awareness of every muscle, every breath. But the results were undeniable. Where once she had crashed through the forest like a startled deer, she now moved with increasing stealth. "Better," Wolf acknowledged, after she successfully navigated the difficult terrain. "Soon move like Cheyenne, not settler." "Is that a compliment?" Emma asked, smiling in his direction. "Statement of fact," Wolf replied, but she detected warmth beneath his matter-of-fact tone. As they walked back toward camp that evening, Emma realized their relationship had subtly shifted. The desperate dependence of their flight from Pine Ridge had evolved into something more balanced, more equal. Wolf still guided her physically when terrain demanded it, but increasingly let her navigate independently when possible. He still instructed, but now asked for her observations as well, valuing her developing perceptions. "Wolf," she said, breaking their companionable silence, "do you think the soldiers have given up looking for us?" He considered before answering, a habit she had come to appreciate. "No," he said finally, "Bluecoat's stubborn. Turn search elsewhere for now, maybe, but not forget." Emma nodded, having expected this answer. "Then I need to learn more. Faster. I can't remain a burden to your people indefinitely." Wolf stopped walking, his hand touching her arm to halt her as well. "Not burden," he said firmly. "Never burden. You work, learn, contribute. Grandmother says your spirit matches Cheyenne woman's, strong, adaptable, enduring." Warmth spread through Emma at his words. "She said that?" "Yes, not only grandmother, others see too. Dancing Fawn says your hands learn what her mothers took seasons to master. Little Badger thinks you hear better than his father, who hunts by sound alone." The praise was unexpected, touching Emma deeply. While some in the camp remained distant, even suspicious, many had gradually accepted her presence, including her, in daily activities and conversation. "I've been happier here than I expected," she admitted softly. "There's purpose in everything we do, and no one treats me as helpless because I'm blind." Wolf made a sound of understanding. "Cheyenne value all skills, all ways of knowing. Blind hunter still tracks by sound. Lame woman still tells stories that carry wisdom. Old one whose hands shake still advises from lifetime of seeing. It's Different in the settlements, Emma said, resignation coloring her voice. There, usefulness is measured more narrowly. Once I lost my sight, many thought I had nothing left to contribute. Their loss, Wolf said simply, their blindness worse than yours. Emma smiled, touched by his perspective. They resumed walking, but she found her thoughts turning to Pine. Ridge Valley, to Thomas and Mary, were they safe at Fort Kearney? Did they mourn her, believing her dead in the raid? Or did they, too, accept the story that she had been taken prisoner by the Cheyenne? You think of family, Wolf observed, once again demonstrating his uncanny ability to read her mood. Yes, she sighed. I can't help wondering if they're safe, if they know I'm alive. Wolf was silent for several steps. Want return to them? He asked finally, his voice carefully neutral. Emma hesitated, the question more complex than it might once have seemed. I want to know they're safe, she said slowly. But return, I don't know. Everything has changed. I've changed. How? Wolf asked, genuine curiosity in his tone. Emma considered, trying to articulate the transformation she felt within herself. I'm stronger now, more capable. I've learned to trust my instincts, my senses, myself. She paused, then added softly, and I've learned there are different ways to see the world, different ways to live in it. Wolf made a sound of approval. Good learning, not easy, but true. They had reached the edge of the camp, the sounds and scents of the evening meal preparation reaching them, but Emma wasn't quite ready to rejoin the community. Wolf, she said, stopping again, if I wanted to stay, would that be possible? I know not everyone welcomes my presence and the danger I bring. Some fear, Wolf acknowledged. Some remember only pain from settlers. But others see you, not just white woman, see how you work, how you learn, how you respect our ways. He paused. Choice would be yours, and bans. Grandmother would call counsel if you asked to remain. Drin, the prospect both frightened and exhilarated Emma. To build a new life here, among people who valued her for her abilities rather than pitied her for her limitations. I need time to think, she said finally. This isn't a decision to make lightly. Wise, Wolf approved. Consider carefully. Meanwhile, learn all you can. Knowledge never wasted, whether you stay or go. As they entered the camp, greeted by the now familiar voices of children playing and women calling to one another, Emma felt a sense of possibility opening before her. For the first time since losing her sight, she was being offered a choice about her future. Not a life constrained by others' expectations of what a blind woman could or should do, but one shaped by her own developing strengths and desires. Whatever she ultimately decided, Emma knew she would never again be the woman who had been left behind in Pine Ridge Valley. That woman had been forged into someone new, someone who walked through darkness with confidence, who claimed her place in the world rather than waiting for others to assign it to her. The transformation had begun the moment Wolf had taken her hand and said, I guide you. But it would be completed by her own choices in the days ahead. 2 weeks had passed since Emma's arrival in Silent Valley, each day bringing new skills, new confidence, and a growing sense of belonging. She had established her place in the daily rhythm of the camp, contributing to communal tasks and learning the ways of the people who had taken her in. The suspicious glances and whispered comments that had marked her early days had largely subsided, replaced by cautious acceptance and, from some, genuine warmth. This morning found her seated outside Grandmother Raven's lodge, her fingers working deftly at a basket of reeds Dancing Fawn had harvested from the marshy area near the hot springs. The intricate weaving pattern had been difficult to master at first, but Emma's sensitive fingers had gradually learned the proper tension, the correct positioning of each reed. Your basket grows well, Grandmother Raven observed. her own gnarled. Hands working on a similar project beside Emma. Soon we'll hold berries without losing even smallest one. Emma smiled, pleased by the elder's rare compliment. Dancing Fawn is a good teacher, and you've taught me patience. The old woman made a sound that might have been amusement. Patience not taught. Patience earned through struggle. You had much struggle before coming here, I think. Yes, Emma acknowledged, her fingers never ceasing their methodical work. Learning to navigate the world without sight was challenging. Not just blindness, Grandmother Raven said shrewdly. Your spirit was already strong before darkness came. Tell me of your life before settlement. Emma's hands stilled momentarily, surprised by the question. In all their conversations, the elder had never inquired about her past beyond Pine Ridge Valley. I grew up in Massachusetts, she began hesitantly. My father was a doctor in a small town. He taught me about healing plants, about caring for the sick. He wanted me to follow in his footsteps, though of course women aren't allowed to become doctors. Foolish rule, Grandmother Raven observed. Here, many healers are women. Most powerful, often grandmothers who have seen many seasons, many sicknesses. Emma nodded, having observed this truth in the camp. My father felt the same. He taught me anyway, saying knowledge shouldn't be bound by such arbitrary limits. She smiled at the memory. When the fever took my sight, he was heartbroken, not just for me, but because he thought my healing knowledge would be lost. But not lost, the old woman noted, just changed. Now you heal through touch, through smell, through hearing plants speak to you. Yes, though it took time to adapt. When I married Thomas and we decided to move west, my father worried I wouldn't survive the journey. Perhaps he was right to worry. Grandmother Raven made a dismissive sound. You survive. Grow stronger. Find new path when old one washed away by storm, like river after flood, may change course but still flows. The metaphor resonated with Emma, capturing exactly how she felt about her transformed life. Dancing Fawn told me you were once a healer for your people. Still am, the elder corrected, but now heal spirits more than bodies. Young healers like Dancing Fawn tend wounds, mix medicines. Grandmother tends deeper hurts, those in heart, in mind, in spirit. Emma heard the wisdom in her words, understanding now why the old woman commanded such respect within the band. Is that why you agreed to shelter me, to heal the deeper hurts? Partly, Grandmother Raven acknowledged. Also because Wolf asked. He walks alone since returning to us, speaks little, shares less. First time he asks anything for himself. Emma felt heat rise to her cheeks. He didn't ask for himself. He asked for me. Same thing, the old woman said simply. His spirit tied to yours now. Blind eyes see this, yes? Before Emma could formulate a response to this startling statement, a commotion erupted at the camp's edge, voices raised in alarm, the rapid approach of running feet. Grandmother Raven set aside her basket, rising with surprising quickness for one of her years. Trouble comes, she said tersely. Stay close. Emma followed, heart pounding. The camp had transformed in seconds from peaceful industry to tense alertness. Children were being gathered, voices calling instructions in rapid Cheyenne. She recognized Wolf's voice among them, issuing what sounded like orders. What's happening? She asked, clutching Grandmother Raven's arm. A young man's voice answered instead. Little Badger, the camp's most talented scout, despite his mere 16 winters. Riders coming, he reported grimly. Many horses, blue coats and others. Others, Emma echoed, fear clawing at her throat. Settler men, Little Badger clarified. One leads, tall man with iron in his voice. Captain Holt, it had to be. Emma felt the blood drain from her face. How far? Less than hour, following Thunder Peak Pass path. Wolf appeared at Emma's side, his arrival so silent she jumped when he spoke. Must prepare. They come with purpose, not patrol, not passing through. They search for camp. For me, Emma whispered, the realization hitting her like a physical blow. They're coming for me. For you. For Wolf. For any reason to strike. At Cheyenne, Wolf replied, his voice tight with suppressed anger. Always find excuse. Grandmother Raven spoke sharply in Cheyenne, and the gathered camp members began dispersing with purposeful haste. Women, children, elders prepare to move deeper into valley, she explained to Emma. Warriors prepare defense, if needed. No, Emma protested. There shouldn't be fighting, not over me. I should go to them, explain what? Wolf interrupted, an edge to his voice she hadn't heard since their first desperate flight from Pine Ridge. That Cheyenne not raid settlement, that Wolf not take you prisoner, they not listen. Minds already made up. But if they see me alive, well, clearly not a prisoner. They see what they want to see, Grandmother Raven said firmly. Captain, like this one, Little Badger knows him from past encounters. He sees only chance for glory, for revenge. Truth means nothing. Emma's shoulders slumped, the weight of responsibility crushing down on her. Her presence had indeed brought danger to these people who had taken her in, taught her, accepted her. People who had shown her more respect in 2 weeks than many in Pine Ridge had in 3 years. What can I do? She asked, her voice steadying with resolve. There must be something. Wolf and Grandmother Raven exchanged a glance she couldn't see but could sense in their momentary silence. You go with women, children, Wolf decided. Hide deeper in valley. Wolf and warriors create distraction. Lead bluecoats away from camp, away from hiding place. And if that fails, Emma pressed, if they find the camp, find me. Another weighted silence. Then Grandmother Raven spoke, her voice carrying the authority of final judgment. Emma Wilson remains with me. I am too old to walk far, too stubborn to hide. If soldiers find us, they find Grandmother sitting peacefully, with blind settler woman as guest in my lodge. No signs of force, no prisoners' bonds. Too dangerous, Wolf protested. Captain Holt not reasonable man. Sees Cheyenne, reaches for gun first, questions after, and then perhaps he will listen to one of his own. The old woman countered. Emma's voice may reach ears closed to ours. Emma straightened, understanding the elder's strategy. Yes, she agreed. If there's no avoiding confrontation, then let me face it directly. Let me speak truth to power. Wolf made a frustrated sound. Words against guns. Uneven match. Not just words, Grandmother Raven corrected. Truth. Power in truth, when spoken without fear. And if truth fails, Wolf persisted, if Captain still demands blood? The old woman's voice hardened. Then we have choices no longer, but until that moment comes, we act with honor, with strength that needs no violence to prove itself. Emma felt the wisdom in Grandmother Raven's approach, even as fear fluttered in her chest. If the soldiers came expecting to rescue her from savage captors, finding her calmly residing with an elderly woman might give them pause, might create space for explanation, for understanding, or it might not. The gamble was enormous. I need to prepare, Emma said, finding determination beneath her fear. Dancing Fawn gave me a dress from your people. I should change back to settler clothes, if any remain. Good thinking, Grandmother Raven approved. Dancing Fawn saved your undergarments. We find something to serve as proper dress. She issued rapid instructions in Cheyenne, sending someone running to fetch the items. All others prepare to move, Wolf ordered, addressing the remaining camp members. Take only what can be carried swiftly. Leave no child, no elder behind. The irony of his words, so unlike the settlers' panicked evacuation, was not lost on Emma. As the camp dissolved into organized activity around them, Wolf drew Emma aside, his voice pitched low for her ears alone. Not like this, he said. frustration evident in his tone. Not with you facing soldiers, facing Holt, too much risk. Emma reached for his hand, finding it clenched in tension. I can't hide while others face danger because of me, she said firmly. I won't be that person, Wolf, not anymore. His fingers slowly uncurled, clasping hers with surprising gentleness. Emma Wilson, not same woman, left behind in burning settlement, he observed, a hint of pride threading through his concern. No, she agreed softly. That woman is gone. Your teaching, grandmother's wisdom, dancing fawn's kindness, they've helped me become someone stronger, someone who stands her ground. Wolf was silent for a moment. Then, if danger comes, real danger, not just words, you run. Promise Wolf this. Run to hiding place, others guide you. Emma hesitated, then nodded. If words fail completely, if violence is the only language they'll speak, then yes, I'll run. But not before I've tried everything else. It was a compromise, and one that clearly didn't entirely satisfy Wolf, but he accepted it with a squeeze of her hand before releasing it. Must help others now. Prepare defenses just in case. Be careful, Emma urged. Captain Holt was a military man. He knows tactics, strategy. So does Wolf, he replied grimly. Learned from bluecoats themselves. He departed, leaving Emma with Grandmother Raven as dancing fawn, arrived with her salvaged undergarments and a trade cloth dress that the young woman explained had been bartered from travelers the previous autumn. Not fancy, dancing fawn apologized as she helped Emma change, but looked like settler woman's dress. It's perfect, Emma assured her, running her hands over the simple cotton garment. It was indeed plain, lacking the detailed embroidery and careful pleating of her lost dress from Pine Ridge, but it would serve the purpose, making her appear as what she was, a settler woman, not a captive. As she dressed, Emma listened to the activity throughout the camp, the organized evacuation proceeding with remarkable efficiency. Children's voices, initially raised in worry, were now calm, responding to the adults' reassuring tones with resilience born of necessity. These people had learned through harsh experience how to disappear into the landscape when threat approached. There, Dancing Fawn said, finishing the last button. Now look like Emma from settlement again. Her voice carried a note of sadness. Liked you better in Cheyenne clothes. Emma smiled, touched by the young woman's sentiment. I preferred them too, she admitted. More practical, more comfortable. But this appearance sends the right message to the soldiers. Be careful, Dancing Fawn urged, echoing Wolf's earlier warning. Captain Holt, cruel man. Last summer, his men burned 3 lodges at North Camp. Say accident, no accident. Emma nodded grimly, unsurprised by this confirmation of the captain's character. She had never fully trusted the man during his visits to Pine Ridge, finding his aggressive certainty and barely concealed contempt for the indigenous people disturbing. That he would lead this expedition, presumably to rescue her, was deeply ironic. Dancing Fawn hugged her suddenly, the gesture startling in its spontaneity. You sister now, she said fiercely, no matter what happens. Remember. Emma hugged her back, throat tight with emotion. I'll remember, be safe. Protect the children. When Dancing Fawn had gone, joining the evacuation party heading deeper into the valley, Grandmother Raven guided Emma back to her lodge. We wait. Now, the elder explained, make camp look peaceful, normal. One lodge still standing. Mine as befits elder who moves slowly. One guest, you, visiting respectfully. What about Wolf and the warriors? Emma asked anxiously. Position in hills, Grandmother Raven replied. Watch approach. If soldiers come peacefully, show themselves. If soldiers come with weapons ready, stay hidden. Create distraction only if needed. The waiting was excruciating. Emma sat in Grandmother Raven's lodge, fingers mechanically working. at her basket weaving, ears straining for any sound of approach. The old woman maintained a remarkable calm, occasionally humming softly as she worked on her own craft, the gentle rhythm oddly soothing despite the circumstances. "How can you be so tranquil?" Emma asked finally, knowing what might happen. Grandmother Raven chuckled, the sound surprisingly youthful. "Child, I have seen 82 winters, have faced bluecoats before, faced hunger, faced sickness, that took half my family in one moon. Fear changes nothing. Calm thinking, clear words, these might change something." Emma nodded, wisdom in the elder's perspective. Panic would serve no purpose now. Better to center herself, to prepare her thoughts, to know exactly what she would say when confronted by Captain Holt and his men. The warning came as a bird call, a meadowlark's distinctive song, repeated 3 times in quick succession. "Grandmother." Raven stiffened, setting aside her work. "They come," she said simply. "Remember, you are guest, not prisoner. Speak truth without fear." Emma nodded, heart pounding despite her resolve to remain calm. She heard them before they reached the camp, the distinctive sound of horses moving at a controlled walk, men's. Voices carrying on the still valley air, the clink of metal that could only be weapons or military tack. Grandmother Raven moved to the lodge entrance, clearly visible to anyone approaching. Emma remained seated just inside, positioned to be seen but not immediately identifiable. The horses halted at what Emma judged to be the camp's perimeter. A voice called out, commanding, familiar, confirming her suspicion. "Hello, the camp. This is Captain Jeremiah Holt of the United States Army. Come out peacefully and you won't be harmed." Grandmother Raven responded, her English clear and carrying. "This is Grandmother Raven of the Cheyenne. Only one lodge remains here, mine. Others gone to summer hunting grounds. Come forward, Captain, and state your business." There was a moment of confusion, murmured consultation among the soldiers. Clearly, they had expected either a deserted camp or armed resistance, not a single elder woman greeting them openly. Hoofbeats approached as several riders moved closer to Grandmother Raven's lodge. Emma steeled herself, knowing the moment of revelation was near. "We're looking for a white woman," Holt announced, his voice now much closer. "Emma Wilson, taken, prisoner during the raid on Pine Ridge Valley. We have information she was brought to this camp." "No prisoners here," Grandmother Raven replied calmly. "Only guests. Perhaps you mean my visitor." "Visitor?" Holt's skepticism was palpable, even without seeing his expression. "Step aside, old woman. We'll search the lodge ourselves." That was Emma's cue. She rose, moving to the lodge entrance with careful dignity. "That won't be necessary, Captain Holt," she said, stepping into the sunlight. "I'm right here." A stunned silence greeted her appearance. Emma wished desperately that she could see their faces, Holt's in particular, as his entire narrative collapsed at the sight of her standing, unbound, unharmed, and clearly not under duress. "Mrs. Wilson," Holt finally managed, disbelief coloring his tone. "You're alive, unharmed?" "Completely unharmed," Emma confirmed, "and here of my own free will, Captain. I was never a prisoner, I was rescued." The silence that followed her statement vibrated with tension. Emma could almost feel Holt's mind working, trying to reconcile her appearance with the story he had constructed. Possibly the story he had told Thomas, the Army command, anyone who would listen. "That's not possible," he said finally, his voice hardening. "The Cheyenne raided Pine Ridge. They took you during the attack." "No, Captain," Emma corrected firmly. "Pine Ridge was raided by the Blackwater Gang, the same outlaws who have been terrorizing both settlements and indigenous communities for months. The same outlaws the Army has consistently failed to pursue or bring to justice. A rustle of uncomfortable movement among the soldiers suggested her words had struck home. Good. Let them feel the weight of their neglect, their selective enforcement. The settlement was burning, Emma continued. In the chaos of evacuation, I was left behind. My husband told me to wait by our wagon while he got our daughter, but in the panic, they left without me. All of them. That's not what Wilson says, another voice interjected, familiar, though Emma couldn't immediately place it. Thomas says the savages grabbed you right off the wagon, says he tried to fight them off, but was overwhelmed. Silas Reed, of course, the neighboring farmer whose perpetual complaints about the Indians had grated on Emma's nerves during community meetings. His presence here, alongside Holt, suddenly made the whole expedition's motivation clearer. Then Thomas is lying, Emma said flatly. Whether to save face or because he truly believes it, I don't know. But the truth is, I was alone when the Cheyenne found me. Alone, terrified, with raiders approaching and the settlement in flames around me. And we're supposed to believe they just helped you out of kindness? Holt's skepticism dripped from every word. These same savages who've been raiding settlements up and down the territory. Grandmother Raven spoke, her voice steady despite the escalating tension. Captain knows Cheyenne not raid settlements. Captain knows who real raiders are. Men without honor who kill, burn, take what not theirs. Men Captain too busy to chase, too afraid to fight. A dangerous silence followed her accusation. Emma sensed Holt's mounting anger, the challenge to his authority and competence striking deep. You've been deceived, Mrs. Wilson, he said finally, his tone shifting to something almost pitying. Stockholm Syndrome, they call it. Captives beginning to sympathize with their captors. It's not your fault. It's a natural response to trauma. Emma felt a flare of indignation at his patronizing assumption. I have not been deceived, Captain, nor have I been traumatized by my rescuers. The only trauma I suffered was being abandoned by my own community, the very people who should have protected me. Enough of this, Holt snapped, patience evidently exhausted. Mrs. Wilson, you're coming with us back to Fort Kearney. Your husband and daughter are waiting. They've been sick with worry. Thomas, Mary, their names struck Emma's heart with complicated emotions, love, longing, but also a new, unsettling doubt. Had Thomas truly convinced himself she'd been kidnapped rather than face the shame of having left her behind? Or had he deliberately constructed a lie, knowing the army would be more motivated to pursue Indian kidnappers than random raiders? And the Cheyenne? She asked, forcing her voice to remain steady. What are your intentions toward the people who saved my life, Captain? That depends on their cooperation, Holt replied, an implicit threat in his words. We have orders to investigate the raid on Pine Ridge and recover any captives. That includes you, Mrs. Wilson, willing or not. The arrogance, the absolute certainty of his righteousness sparked something in Emma that transcended fear. She straightened to her full height, facing directly toward Holt's voice. I am not a captive, Captain. I am a free woman making my own choices, and I choose not to go with you under these circumstances, not while you threaten the very people who saved me when my own community left me to die. Holt made a sound of exasperation. This isn't a negotiation, Mrs. Wilson. You're coming with us, one way or another. Wilson deserves to have his wife returned. Does he? Emma challenged, a new edge to her voice. The man who abandoned me during evacuation, who apparently concocted a story about my kidnapping rather than admit his failure. That man deserves to have me returned like a piece of property. Murmurs arose among the soldiers, uncomfortable, uncertain. Emma pressed. Her advantage, sensing the fracturing of Holt's narrative. What Thomas deserves is the truth, Captain. As do you. as do the Cheyenne, who have been falsely accused of raids they did not commit, hostage-taking that never occurred. The truth, Holt scoffed, from savages and their sympathizers. Test truth, Grandmother Raven suggested suddenly. Send 2 men ride to Fort Kearney, bring Thomas Wilson here. Let husband see wife, speak with wife, let truth show itself. The proposal hung in the air, its simple logic difficult to dismiss. Emma heard Holt shift in his saddle, considering. And in the meantime, I suppose we just camp here? Surrounded by Cheyenne, who've conveniently disappeared into the hills. Camp where you wish, Grandmother Raven replied with dignity. But know this, if harm comes to any Cheyenne, if lodge burns, if shot fired, word spreads fast in mountains. Many bands hear, many warriors respond. Captain leads how many men? 20, 30. Not enough if war begins today. It was not a direct threat, but the implication was clear. Violence here would not be contained to Silent Valley. It would spread across the territory like wildfire. A tense silence followed the old woman's words. Then Holt spoke, his tone clipped. Reed Taylor, ride back to Fort Kearney. Find Wilson, bring him here. Tell the lieutenant what's happened, but keep it quiet. No need to start a panic. Yes, sir, 2 voices responded in unison. The rest of you, we're making camp at the valley entrance, defensive perimeter, regular patrols. Holt's voice hardened. And Mrs. Wilson, you'll be staying with us during the wait. I'm not leaving you here to disappear into the hills before your husband arrives. Emma stiffened. I've already told you, Captain, I'm not your prisoner. I won't be treated as one. Consider it protective custody, Holt countered, for your own safety. Before Emma could respond, Grandmother Raven spoke, her tone implacable. Emma Wilson stays with Grandmother. Captain stations men outside. Lodge if must watch her, but she not leave my protection, this non-negotiable. The standoff stretched, tension vibrating in the air between the elderly Cheyenne woman and the army captain. Emma held her breath, acutely aware that the wrong word, the wrong move, could ignite violence that would consume them all. Finally, Holt conceded, though with poor grace. Fine, we'll post guards, but if there's any attempt to move her, any sign of Cheyenne warriors approaching the camp, all deals are off. Understood? Understood, Grandmother Raven acknowledged. Now, Captain and men must make camp. Much preparation before night comes. Grandmother and Emma Wilson remain here, cooking evening meal like civilized people do. The dismissal in her tone was unmistakable, prompting a surprised snort from one of the soldiers, quickly stifled. Holt issued curt orders, and the majority of the patrol withdrew to establish their camp at the valley entrance, leaving 2 men posted outside Grandmother Raven's lodge. When relative privacy was restored, Emma sank onto her sleeping mat, legs suddenly weak with released tension. That was intense, she murmured. First battle only, Grandmother Raven cautioned, settling beside her. Captain not convinced, just delayed. Real test comes when husband arrives. Thomas. Emma's heart contracted at the thought of facing him again, of hearing whatever justification he had created for leaving her behind, of confronting the lies he had apparently told about her disappearance. I don't know what to say to him, she admitted softly. Everything has changed. I've changed. Speak truth, the old woman advised simply. Your heart knows way, even when mind confused. Listen to deeper voice. Emma nodded, grateful for the elder's steadying presence. What about Wolf and the others? Are they safe? Safe for now, watching, waiting. Grandmother Raven patted Emma's hand. Wolf not abandon you, but must protect band first. Children, elders who cannot defend themselves. Of course, Emma agreed immediately. Their safety is paramount. I wouldn't want him risking himself, or others unnecessarily. The old woman made a sound of approval. Good, you think like Cheyenne now, community before self. This why band accepts you. See how you learn not just skills, but heart of our ways. Emma hadn't considered her transformation in quite those terms, but recognized the truth in Grandmother Raven's observation. Her values had shifted subtly during her time in Silent Valley, from the individualistic focus of settler culture to the more communal perspective of the Cheyenne. "What happens now?" she asked, the immediate future unclear, despite the arrangement with Holt. "Now we wait," Grandmother Raven replied pragmatically. "Cook food, continue baskets, show soldiers Cheyenne grandmother and settler woman live peacefully, work together as friends, small seeds planted in watching eyes." Emma recognized the wisdom in this approach. Every moment of normal, peaceful interaction between them undermined the narrative of savagery and captivity Holt clung to so desperately. As they resumed their basket weaving, a strange calm settled over Emma, despite the guards stationed outside, and the army camp established near the valley entrance. A confrontation was coming, with Thomas, with her past, with the future she would choose. But for the first time in her life, she faced such a reckoning, not from a position of weakness or dependence, but from one of strength and clarity. Whatever happened when Thomas arrived, Emma would meet it on her own terms, not as the blind woman who had been left behind, but as the woman who had found her way forward through darkness into a new understanding of herself and the world around her. The threat that had arrived with Holt and his men was real, but so was her resolve, tempered in the crucible of survival and nurtured by the wisdom of her Cheyenne teachers. She was ready. The morning sun had just crested the eastern ridge when Emma heard the approaching horses. 2 days had passed since Captain Holt's arrival. 2 days of careful tension as the soldiers maintained their watch and Grandmother Raven maintained her dignity. Now the moment of reckoning had arrived. "They come," Grandmother Raven said quietly, pausing in her morning food preparation. "Many horses, your husband among them." Emma nodded, smoothing her borrowed dress with trembling hands. Despite hours of mental preparation, her heart raced at the prospect of confronting Thomas. What would she say? How could she explain the transformation that had occurred within her? Would he even recognize the woman she had become? Voices approached, Holt's commanding tone, another responding with military precision, and then a third that sent a jolt through Emma's body. Thomas. After everything that had happened, his voice still triggered a complex surge of emotions: love, loss, betrayal, uncertainty. "Wait inside," Grandmother Raven advised. "Let them come to you, stronger position." Emma nodded, grateful for the elder's strategic thinking. She settled herself cross-legged on a mat near the lodge's center, hands folded calmly in her lap. The picture of composure, despite her inner turmoil. Footsteps halted outside the lodge. Holt's voice called, "Mrs. Wilson, your husband is here." "Enter," Grandmother Raven responded from her position near the entrance. The lodge flap opened, allowing morning light to flood the dim interior. Emma kept her face turned toward the entrance, her unseeing eyes directed at the man she had married, the man who had left her behind. "Emma?" Thomas's voice broke on her name, thick with disbelief. "My God, Emma, is it really you?" "It's me." "Thomas," she confirmed, her own voice steadier than she had expected. "They told me, but I couldn't believe." He rushed forward, dropping to his knees before her, hands grasping hers with desperate intensity. "I thought you were dead. Then Holt said the Cheyenne had taken you and I wasn't taken, Thomas." Emma interrupted gently but firmly. "I was rescued after being left behind." His hands stiffened on hers. "Left behind? No, Emma, you don't understand. There was chaos. The raiders were everywhere. I saw a Cheyenne grab you from the wagon." "No, Thomas," Emma said, withdrawing her hands from his grasp. "That didn't happen. You told me to wait by the wagon while you got Mary. You never came back. The wagons left and I was alone when the settlement burned around me." A heavy silence followed her contradiction. Emma could almost feel Thomas's struggle, the collision between the narrative he had constructed and the truth she presented. That's not... I wouldn't have... He faltered, then tried again. Emma, you've been through a terrible ordeal. The shock, the trauma, it's affected your memory. Anger flared, sudden and hot. My memory is perfectly clear, Emma stated, her voice hardening, as is my mind. I'm not confused, Thomas. I'm not traumatized, at least not by the people who saved me. Saved you? These savages? Thomas's voice took on a familiar tone, the patronizing patience he'd adopted after her blindness, as if she were a child who couldn't grasp simple realities. Emma, listen to yourself. They've turned you against your own kind. My own kind, Emma echoed, the phrase striking her as suddenly meaningless. You mean the people who abandoned me? Who left me to die in a burning settlement? Those are my kind. That's not fair, Thomas protested. We were under attack. Everyone was panicking. Yes, Emma acknowledged. Everyone was afraid, including me, Thomas, blind, alone, with flames and raiders closing in. How afraid do you think I was in that moment, realizing everyone, including my husband, had fled without me? Thomas had no immediate answer. In the silence, Captain Holt cleared his throat from the lodge entrance, where he stood with Grandmother Raven. Mrs. Wilson, whatever happened during the evacuation, the fact remains that you need to return with us to Fort Kearny. Your daughter needs her mother. Mary. The mention of her daughter pierced Emma's heart with longing. How is she? She asked Thomas softly. She misses you terribly, he replied, seizing on this opening. She cries for you every night, Emma. She needs you home. Home. The word hung in the air, suddenly fraught with questions. What was home now? Where did she truly belong? I've changed, Thomas, Emma said, struggling to articulate the transformation within her. These past weeks, I've discovered strengths I never knew I had. I've learned to survive, to contribute, to be valued for my abilities rather than pitied for my blindness. You were always valued, Thomas protested. I never pitied you. Didn't you? Emma challenged gently. When you suggested sending me back east after the fever, when you took over tasks I was perfectly capable of performing, when you spoke for me in conversations as if I couldn't answer for myself. Thomas shifted uncomfortably. I was trying to protect you. I know, Emma acknowledged, but protection can become a cage, Thomas. Here with the Cheyenne, I've learned to move beyond those limitations, to trust my other senses, to develop new skills, to find my way in the world on my own terms. With savages, Thomas said flatly. Learning to what? Weave baskets, skin rabbits? This is the great liberation you're claiming? Emma sighed, hearing the dismissiveness in his tone. Those skills mean survival, Thomas, independence, dignity. And yes, the Cheyenne taught me those things. The same people you call savages showed me more respect as a blind woman than many in Pine Ridge ever did. A tense silence followed her words. Emma sensed Thomas struggling, trying to reconcile the submissive, dependent wife he remembered with the confident woman before him now. What are you saying? He asked finally, his voice strained. That you want to stay here, live with these people, abandon your family, your daughter? I would never abandon Mary, Emma said sharply. Never, but I can't simply return to being the woman I was before either, Captain Holt interjected, his patience clearly waning. This is all very moving, Mrs. Wilson, but the fact remains that we have orders to escort all settlers back to Fort Kearny. This isn't a negotiation. Before Emma could respond, a commotion erupted outside, raised voices, running feet. One of Holt's men burst into the lodge without ceremony. Captain, riders approaching from the south, a dozen, maybe more, armed. Holt cursed, turning toward the entrance. Cheyenne? No, sir. White men. Looked like a rough bunch. Emma's blood ran cold with sudden understanding. The Blackwater gang, she whispered. The real raiders. Impossible, Holt dismissed. They operate further south. They wouldn't dare. He was interrupted by Wolf's voice, calling from somewhere outside the lodge. Captain Holt, raiders come. Same who burned Pine Ridge. The soldiers' reactions were immediate. Weapons readied, positions taken up around the perimeter of Grandmother Raven's lodge. Thomas pulled Emma roughly to her feet. We need to get you out of here, he insisted. Back to the horses, back to Fort Kearney. No, Emma pulled free of his grasp. Running blindly is more dangerous than standing our ground. Wolf and the warriors know these hills. They can help. Trust Cheyenne, Thomas scoffed. They're probably in league with the raiders. Grandmother Raven's voice cut through the tension, sharp with authority. Fool, man. Why Cheyenne warn if in league with enemies? Why not let raiders kill soldiers? Take revenge for years of bluecoat crimes? The old woman's logic was irrefutable. Even Holt seemed to recognize it, hesitating before issuing his next orders. How many warriors do you have nearby? He asked grudgingly. 8 with Wolf, Grandmother Raven replied. Good fighters, know valley well, can position where raiders not expect. Holt nodded curtly. Tell them to coordinate with Lieutenant Parker. We'll establish a defensive perimeter around the lodge. The old woman slipped outside, calling instructions in Cheyenne that were answered by distant voices from the hillsides. Emma felt Thomas's hand close around her arm again, his grip gentler but still insistent. Emma, please. This is dangerous. Let me take you somewhere safe. There is no safer place than here, she replied with quiet certainty. Between Wolf's warriors and Holt's soldiers, this lodge is better defended than anywhere in the valley. You trust this, Wolf, and that much? Thomas asked, an unfamiliar note in his voice. Not quite jealousy, but something adjacent to it. Uncertainty, perhaps, or the dawning recognition of a bond he couldn't understand. With my life, Emma answered simply. He's earned the trust a dozen times over. Before Thomas could respond, gunfire erupted from the valley entrance, sharp cracks of rifles answered by the deeper boom of cavalry carbines. The battle had begun. Stay down, Holt ordered from his position near the lodge entrance. They're trying to break through our perimeter. Emma sank back to the floor, pulling Thomas down beside her. The raiders want revenge, she explained, and quickly. Wolf told me they've been growing bolder for months, attacking settlements, Cheyenne camps, even army patrols. They see themselves as the true power in the territory. Why target us specifically? Thomas asked, confusion evident in his voice. Because you're here, Emma replied. An army captain, soldiers from Fort Kearney, settlers. The perfect opportunity to eliminate those who might organize against them. The gunfire intensified, punctuated by shouts and the thunder of running horses. Emma strained to make sense of the chaos through sound alone, piecing together the battle's progress from fragments of noise. They're flanking around the eastern ridge, Holt called to his men. Shore up that position. A new voice joined the fray, Wolf calling instructions that blended Cheyenne and English. Warriors in trees, high ground, pin raiders in crossfire. The coordinated response was remarkable. Soldiers and Cheyenne warriors, traditional enemies, suddenly fighting as allies against a common threat. Emma felt a surge of hope despite the danger. If they could cooperate in battle, perhaps understanding was possible in peace as well. Thomas shifted beside her, his breathing rapid with tension. This is madness, he muttered, caught between raiders and Cheyenne. The Cheyenne are fighting to protect us, Emma corrected firmly, just as they protected me when no one else would. A cry from outside, a man's voice raised in pain. Not Wolf, Emma determined with relief, but one of Holt's soldiers. The fighting was drawing closer to the lodge. Captain, Lieutenant Parker's voice, urgent. They're breaking through the eastern line. Fall back to the lodge, Holt commanded. Defensive positions. The sounds of battle converged around them, boots on hard earth, the metallic click of weapons being reloaded, men's voices terse. With controlled fear, Emma felt utterly helpless, unable to contribute to the defense, unable even to see the approaching danger. Then Wolf was there, slipping into the lodge like a shadow. "Emma," he said urgently, "must move you. Raiders target lodge directly." "How?" she asked, rising quickly to her feet. "We're surrounded." "Secret path," Wolf explained. "Behind lodge, through rocks, leads to Hot Springs Cave. Safe place, hidden." Thomas stood as well, his hand finding Emma's. "I'm coming with her," he stated, not a question, but a declaration. Wolf hesitated only briefly. "Yes, follow close, silent steps." They slipped out through a rear flap Emma hadn't known existed, Wolf leading, Emma following with her hand in his, Thomas bringing up the rear. The sounds of battle receded slightly as they moved into the rocks behind the lodge, following what felt like a game trail winding through boulder fields. "What about Grandmother Raven?" Emma asked as they climbed. "Already safe," Wolf assured her. "Dancing Fawn lead her to cave when fighting start." The path steepened, requiring all Emma's concentration to navigate. Wolf guided her expertly, placing her hands on secure holds, warning of loose stones or sharp drops. Thomas followed in silence, his breathing labored with exertion. The air gradually warmed, growing humid with mineral-scented steam. They had reached the hot springs, though in a section Emma hadn't visited before. Wolf led them through a narrow crevice into what could only be a cave. Voices greeted them, familiar ones, Dancing Fawn, Grandmother Raven, several children and other elders. "Emma!" Dancing Fawn embraced her quickly. "You safe? Good!" "The fighting?" Emma asked anxiously. "The soldiers?" "Hold position," Wolf reported. "Raiders not expect resistance so strong, not expect soldiers and Cheyenne fight together." Thomas spoke, his voice tight with conflicted emotions. "You saved us. Again. Protect those who need protection." Wolf replied simply. "Cheyenne way." A profound silence followed, not empty, but weighted with unspoken understanding. In that moment, Emma sensed something shift in Thomas, a crack in the wall of prejudice and misunderstanding he had built. "I need to go back," Wolf said after a moment. "Help finish fight. You stay here, safe." "Be careful," Emma urged, her hand finding his arm. Wolf's fingers briefly covered hers. "Always careful," he assured her, then was gone, his footsteps fading. Rapidly as he returned to the battle, left in the cave with Thomas and the Cheyenne refugees, Emma felt the future hanging in the balance, not just the immediate outcome of the battle, but all that would follow. Whatever happened next would determine the path of many lives, including her own. "He loves you," Thomas said suddenly, his voice very quiet. "I can see it in how he looks at you, how he says your name." Emma didn't deny it. "He sees me," she replied simply. "The real me, not just a blind woman to be protected, but a person with strength, with value, with potential." "And I didn't," Thomas concluded, the realization clearly painful. "You tried in your way," Emma acknowledged, "but you could never see past what I'd lost." Wolf saw what remained, what could grow from that loss if nurtured properly. Thomas was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice carried a resignation that told Emma he had finally accepted the truth. "You're not coming back with us, are you?" "Not to stay," she said gently. "I'll come to see Mary, to explain. She deserves that much. But my path lies here now, Thomas, with these people who have become my teachers, my friends, my family. And with Wolf," Thomas added, not accusingly but as simple fact. "Yes," Emma admitted, "with Wolf." The distant sounds of battle were fading, suggesting the conflict was reaching its conclusion. Whether victory or defeat awaited them outside the cave, Emma knew one truth with absolute certainty. She had already won her most important battle, The fight to define herself on her own terms, to chart her own course, despite blindness, despite abandonment, despite all expectations. She had stepped from darkness into a different kind of light, one that required no eyes to see, only the courage to keep moving forward into the unknown. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.